All right, ready for our next session now? This one's called the Arms Race for Biometric Face Verification. And we have a remote presenter this afternoon. It is Aarti Samani from iProov, and she's the Senior Vice President of Products and Marketing. So I'll hand it over to our tech crew. Thank you, and welcome.
Thank you. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am deeply sorry that I'm not with you in person over there. This is due to the travel restrictions from Europe, but delighted that we are able to connect via technology. I am Aarti Samani. I lead product and marketing at iProov. iProov assures genuine human presence with cutting-edge face biometric technology. We work with public and private sector organizations globally who are passionate about delivering inclusive solutions that secure their users. And today, I want to reflect on how we think about threats to biometric verification. We already know that more and more people are accessing services online. Some of them are very new to this experience. We call them digital novices. The pandemic has accelerated this whole process, and online services have become a honeypot for attackers, especially those services where there is a high reward. This can be in the form of financial gain, social disruption, or other currency like identity or data that can be monetized in different ways. You can see from the stats on the screen that use of face authentication is becoming accepted as a convenient and trusted method of online verification. New services are digitized continually, driving a higher and more frequent need to prove identity. The stakes on online fraud and identity theft continue to rise. Organizations just cannot afford any security lapses. Risks are high, both financially and reputationally. Increase in availability and use of online services has also given bad actors a powerful cover to evade detection and develop new threat vectors. Look at the staggering stats. Last year, we saw a significant increase in identity theft. Pandemic-related stimulus programs became lucrative for individuals with negative motivations. We can be confident that these trained fraudsters will utilize their experience and knowledge to apply it to other sectors. Thanks to inexpensive, state-of-the-art technology, the organized criminal venture scene is burgeoning. There is an increased proliferation of crime as a service, which involves delivery of a range of criminal services, from the very technical, like providing cybercrime applications, to the more commercial, like money laundering services. On a positive note, though, there is an acceptance now that the current systems are not good enough, and there needs to be a mandated change for better consumer protection. When considering biometric authentication systems, there are some points of vulnerability during the customer lifecycle that need to be taken care of. If these are not proactively managed, fraudsters will use them to attack online services. When onboarding a user for the first time, there is no corroborating information about that person beyond what they are declaring. It is vital that we do not take chances at this point. Stringent security measures need to be in place to avoid risk of enrolling and subsequently granting access to the wrong person. This can incur significant financial loss, impact regulatory compliance, and even lead to social disruption. Ongoing access is a perfect fraud bed for online account manipulation or takeover. Some services offer high incentive and therefore pose a higher risk, while others less so. So flexibility in authentication and therefore a risk-based security approach is needed. The process of linking a device to the user account is referred to as identity recovery. If at this point we expect the person to re-enroll, we are exposing them to the same kind of risks that they were exposed to during onboarding. This is unnecessary. By facilitating process through a cloud-hosted service, the risk can be eliminated. Onboarding and identity recovery are particularly high risk because device possession as a factor cannot be used at this point. And remember, security has to be delivered in a way that is easily usable and inclusive. We live In an age of AI and machine learning, the technology that we use for good is the same that is used for bad also. The more advanced the technology, the more advanced the threat. Similarly, the better the technologist, the better the attackers. We see attacks most often where we are guarding assets of value. The individuals capitalizing on this are rational, they are motivated, and at iProov, we segment them in two ways. One is the opportunistic. They hold up a photo. If that doesn't work, they go away. The second one is the purposeful. These people are motivated by profit and they have a business model. They're trying to find a scalable way to break the system because it is worth a lot of money to them. The greater the value of assets you guard, the greater the incentive for them to break it. But this doesn't mean that they only attack places where assets of value are guarded. Their training ground is actually the low risk area. It is here that they learn about the system, which they then apply to high value areas. Once they have found the key, it then costs nothing to launch at scale. There is virtually no effort or cost involved. Detailed manuals are published and readily available for others like them to use. Take an example of deepfake. Until 2 years ago, these were limited just to public figures. Now, a single image can be easily converted to deepfake, and this is done regularly to harass innocent victims. The opportunistics will usually try imposter or presentation attacks. With imposter attacks, they pretend to be someone else. So they pass the test of the real person, but they are not the right person. And most systems out there will try and stop these. With presentation attacks, they will take a digital or a physical artifact and present to the camera. Here, they pass the test of the right person, but they are not real human beings. And sadly, there are many solutions, too many solutions out there that still do not recognize masks, etc., as non-human. Presentation attacks are on a spectrum, from the very simple still photo on the screen to a simple paper cutout to the one that you see here, which is a very high quality mask. We often get asked if we still see presentation attacks, and the answer is yes, we do, but usually only at the very early stage of a new deployment. There is a small portion of the attack vectors. Remember, it is expensive to create good quality masks, and you have to make them one at a time. So presentation attacks cannot be launched at scale, and really, to do it properly, you have to invest a lot of money, and the return on investment is relatively low. The real threat actually comes from attacks which involve synthetic or doctored images or even basic replays that have been injected in the data stream. We know this because we see them in hundreds and thousands every day. There is an ever-growing threat from digital injection attacks. Criminals leverage these in many ways and attempt to gain access to the system. It could be a very simple replay of a pre-recorded authentication or a basic deepfake or a very advanced synthetic image, which is injected into the data stream between the server and the user's device. In cyber terms, we call this man-in-the-middle attack. This type of attack takes a lot more effort initially and requires the hacker to have some kind of knowledge of the communication channel between the device and the server. Because once an attacker understands this exchange, it is then possible to mimic a real device and inject that synthetic image. We see a large number of these types of attacks every day. It's not just an interesting idea anymore, it is a very real threat. Many of these contain faces that are synthesized from scratch, while others contain synthetic motion. There is no limit, and it is just limited by the creativity of the attacker. We see constant evolution in the attack vectors as well as the attack surface. So what do I mean by an attack surface? Well, the purposeful attacker will inject a basic video first. If that doesn't work, they will introduce motion in it. They will then say, okay, perhaps it's blocked because of the way in which I'm injecting. So let me take control of the application itself, and so it continues. So as an example, the image you see here on the left is a recording of an iProov authentication that was injected. At first, it did not work. So the motion of the device was used to create a new attack and try again. You can see the whole picture is moving. That's because the device is moving. When that did not work either, they added motion of the biometric. So you can see that the face is talking. Now, talking is not a requirement of the iProov authentication experience, but the attacker in this case is trying different ways to bypass the system. That didn't work either. But the point is that the attacker will try new things continually. The image on the right shows how motion of one face is added to a still image of a different face to create a more advanced deepfake. So we see this type of iterative buildup of our attacks all the time. In order to mitigate these and other threats, what you have to do is confirm real-time presence. What I mean is that the person asserting their identity has to be A, the right person, which is resolved by face matching technology to make sure that it's not an imposter attack. B, it has to be the real person. Is this a human face? This requires liveness detection to spot a presentation attack, to spot a presented artifact. And C, and very crucially, that individual is authenticating right now or not. That is really critical. We need to make sure that the authentication is not an injected video or a deepfake or a replay attack. Only when all the three come together, the right person, the real person, and the real-time presence of the authenticator, you can be sure that the person is a real human being and that they are actually going through the authentication process. So genuine presence assurance provides all three to give you the highest confidence that the remote user is really who they say they are. iProov has been extensively tested by governments globally. Specifically, the Red Team tested us rigorously on behalf of the Department of Homeland Security, where the objective was to simulate nation-level attack. Using the most advanced techniques, the team simulated previously unseen attacks. We had never experienced anything like that before. And the Red Team concluded that no access was gained and that they were not able to bypass the iProov authentication system. There are also many misconceptions out there. And the most common one is that there is a fixed set of attacks that can be applied to a system. And provided that you have tested for that entire set, the system is secure. That is incorrect. These are called static defenses. Static defenses worked way back when the attacks were simple and fairly predictable. The reality today, though, is that there are people out there who are serious and will not stop. So for as long as you have a system that guards assets of value, they will travel the never-ending path to find a way to break it. And when they discover that something has worked, they will do it over and over again. So your attack rate will be fairly low when they're in the discovery phase, but when they find a way to break in, the attack rate goes up. That is the reason we say static defenses are brittle. You throw enough stones, enough times, and it will break. Basically, attackers work on a feedback loop. The opportunistics will try a few things. When that doesn't work, they'll stop trying and drop out of the funnel. The purposefuls will continue in the discovery phase. That's when the attack rate will drop, but then rise again as they exploit that loophole. The problem with static defenses, though, is that once it has been broken, the effort to then break it again is zero. And we know that attackers share successful tactics. This is why it is critical to have a system that is cloud hosted and be able to actively mitigate attacks as they rapidly evolve. It is also critical to be able to look for the unknown unknowns. A dynamic and centrally monitored approach is required to adapt to the constantly changing landscape. Solution needs to be actively monitored for and protected from evolving biometric as well as platform security threats, especially to prevent attacks from becoming scalable and repetitive. Static systems are vulnerable to both reverse engineering and experimentation. So at iProov, we have a security operations center which supports our genuine presence solution. It is a combination of advanced technology and that automatically monitor activity, perform tests, and raise alerts. It continually learns from the emerging patterns that may culminate into new, previously unseen attacks. Our team of experts is then able to analyze the attack scenarios, close the vulnerability gaps, and future-proof the system. It is important to note here that we cannot and should not leave the algorithm to train itself and respond to the emerging pattern. So this is where we have to break machine learning. Otherwise, inadvertently, the system starts to weaken itself. Algorithms need to be thoroughly tested with robust business controls before deployment. It is not enough, though, just to have a solution which can protect against biometric threats. Security has to be the golden thread that is weaved throughout the business process. Governance processes audited by independent bodies to meet industry standards are a must. Our systems are part of the biometric attacks, but they are also exposed to the traditional technology hack style attacks all the time. Software and platform patches need to always be up to date. Some European standards like ETSI recommend that this is monitored once a month. At iProov, we monitor it daily because we just cannot afford to take any chances. We take our attack response and incident management processes also very seriously, right down to the detail of how we communicate should there ever be an attack. All of these are compliant with standards like Electronic Identity and Trust Services, which is also known as EIDAS. Some standards, like the ISO 27001, expect continuous improvement in management of information security. With each audit, we get more efficient, we get better at managing the risks in our business. As security vendors, we hold the key to trust. Our customers and partners trust us to do the right thing. Incidents should be reported accurately and with complete honesty. Unless we exhibit zero tolerance to breach of trust, the integrity of our authentication solutions will be undermined. To wrap up, I would just say we are faced with a very rapidly evolving online environment and even more rapidly evolving threat landscape. Security solutions need to be adaptive, mechanisms to close the loopholes need to be in place, and the entire business process needs to be robust. We, the solution providers, need to stay ahead of this arms race. It is our responsibility to protect unsuspecting individuals. Thank you for joining me today. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Aarti. So first, if we've got a question here in the audience, we have one from online. No, in the audience? Okay, so the first question from online is, are there any stats or research on how fraudsters can beat the liveness test? And two, what technologies solution providers have proven success or are the leaders in defending against those threats? It's from Yan Yang.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. So unfortunately, there aren't industry standards that protect, that test for all the entire threat vector or the threat landscape. There are some testing bodies and some standards that protect, that test for presentation attacks. But like I said in my talk, that presentation attacks are a minority of the attack vectors that we see. The majority is coming from the injection attacks, the digital attacks. And unfortunately, there are no industry test bodies who do that, who test for it, nor there are published, widely available metrics or results in the way that NIST publishes the face matching test results. But there is nothing to our awareness for liveness. So that's why we put our product and our technologies through test processes with governments across the world. We work with governments in Asia, United States, Europe, everywhere. And each time they procure us, they put iProov through a very, very stringent testing process. Each time we come out more secure than any other vendor that went into the process. And that is our proof to say, hey, look, we have been tested independently. And here are the results of an independent test, which prove that we are at this moment unbreakable.
Great, thank you. Do we have any other questions? No, not at this time. So I want to thank Aarti again for giving a great presentation. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, and really glad to be with you.